Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Voices from the Mausoleum, and welcome to a shorter, divided episode of Found Footage Fridays with my co-host, Tom Reimer.
Hey, everyone. It's Tom, and thanks for coming and checking out another episode of Found Footage Fridays. This week, Angel and I could not find a time to film at the same time, so we're sort of filming our opinions on this week's movie separately. I think she's going to splice them together. So, if you don't already know, this week's episode focuses on the Bigfoot film Willow Creek, which is directed by Bobcat Goldthwait, the actor. And, you know, we've talked about, I think we've mentioned this before on multiple episodes. It's pretty mainstream. It almost was an episode we discussed on our 50th episode recently. And it's, in my opinion, it's the best of the Bigfoot sub genre of found footage films. I don't think it's great. I think it's good. It's solid. Definitely has its flaws, but it's pretty good. It's a good movie, and I would rate it just above the movie Exists, which is, in my opinion, the second best Bigfoot found footage film. And I know Angel will definitely disagree with that. So my rating for this movie, I really like it. I think it's not just a Bigfoot film, it's also a Lost in the Woods style, running and screaming, camping, good summertime feel found footage film. It's got some great exposition at the beginning where we really get a chance to meet a lot of the locals who are really believable, and without doing any research, I wonder if a lot of them are just actually real people who are Bigfoot experts. You know, they go to a Bigfoot bookstore, and there's a Bigfoot hotel and a Bigfoot restaurant of some kind where they get Bigfoot burgers, and it all feels very real. Like, you can really see these places really existing. So I guess I'm assuming they all do. I could be wrong. And I really liked a lot of that build-up. It does have, and I think this is probably more of a negative for Angel in some ways, it definitely has a Blair Witch sort of feel to it. Definitely a lot of, specifically some moments that maybe pull from that movie, maybe the creators of this film, or and in fact most people who love found footage are fans of the Blair Witch Project, so I imagine it's no different here. But there's a lot that's really similar, from the tense scenes in particular. A lot of the getting lost in the woods sort of thing, which is a lot of the movie, has a similar feel to it. So I am going to rate the movie Willow Creek. I'm going to give it seven tapes, which that's 7 out of 10, which is, I think, about half a tape higher than I rated the movie Exists, and because I think it's about half a tape better than that movie. I thought that these two characters were more believable than all of the characters in the movie Exists. I thought that, you know, a lot of the supporting characters in this, as far as at the beginning of the movie, also were very believable. I liked the Lost in the Woods thing. I do like that, obviously, as someone who is a huge fan of the Blair Witch Project. That's really appealing to me. I like that more than the stuck in the cabin sort of home invasion sort of feel of the movie Exists. I will say that there are some moments in this that are drawn out a little bit, particularly the tense scene, which is has some really frightening moments. I feel like in general, the thing that really makes the difference for me between this and the movie Exists is that I feel Willow Creek is a more realistic to me as far as what would actually happen if you come across a Bigfoot in the woods. I just feel like that. Like, it feels like your tent might get visited by a Bigfoot. The growling outside the tent, the howls in the distance. I'm a little bit. I feel like there is some open-endedness to the end of this movie. I'm a little bit confused, exactly what does happen and what supposedly is going on. Was it actually a Bigfoot or was it something else? Because you see some woman standing there at the end, so I don't know exactly what that's supposed to be. Are these just like Bigfoot reenactors or something like that? This is where I wish I was sitting and talking with Angel, because I would love to hear sort of what she's thinking or how she interpreted the end of that movie. The movie, also another negative, does end very abruptly. Main character sort of just, spoiler alert, the main character is just sort of drug out into the woods, and you just see him holding onto the camera still, which I debate whether he'd still be holding on to that if he was being dragged out into the woods by a Bigfoot. But something definitely gets him at the end. We don't see what happens to his girlfriend. So I really do. I mean, other than sort of the very end, which is a sort of a problematic thing with a lot of found footage films. A lot of found footage movies have a very unsatisfying, abrupt ending, and this is no different than a lot of those films. And so I can't knock it down too much for that, because I think in general I'd be really knocking down all found footage films with some of those critiques, especially the holding onto the camera problem at the end. Also, I know I can just sort of guess Angel's going to say she thought that this pulled too much from the Blair Witch Project, and I think it pays homage to it, but no, in my opinion, no more than that. This one, people who, I feel like if you've seen one Bigfoot found footage film, you've probably seen Willow Creek. It's widely available, and I think it is definitely worth a watch. It definitely is perfect for this time of the year, and I know we're trying to watch and cover some found footage films that are better for the summer months. I definitely got that feel here. This I just feel like it's just a solid found footage film. I get why a lot of people like it. I get why it's more sort of talked about. And I know there's sort of this faction, a lot of people love Exists, which I think is also a solid found footage film. But I find more problem with that movie than this one. And I think it's more about the believability of a lot of things, the actors, the actual story, and what happens. To me, this just works a little bit better. A little bit. They're pretty close. This movie and Exists. So I definitely think you should go out and watch Willow Creek if you haven't yet. If you have already seen it, let us know what you think. And hopefully next week, I don't know what we are watching, but hopefully Angel and I will be filming together again, and talking about another probably summer sort of set or camping or travel based found footage film that'll be really great for this.
Yeah, so I've kind of given my piece a little bit about Willow Creek before. My first watch of this was 2 years ago when I did the Found Footage Live, which was kind of where, I guess, like, or, sorry, my cat got scared from his own shadow, I guess. It's kind of like the origin story of Found Footage Fridays, and like the first thing that Tom and I ever did together on camera. And I, I'm a Bigfoot, I guess I'm not like a fanatic, maybe enthusiast. So Exist to me is the best. Of course, Tom said it. I'm not, we totally disagree on this one. And Willow Creek is one that I just, I think it's definitely like a slower build, right? So you go into Willow Creek and it's pretty, I think most people know it. I think you know what it's about right away. It is the middle, you know, going out into the woods and that kind of thing. I think that some of that stuff is fine. I think for me, you know, a lot of found footage films do this where they start out like really, really slow. And then they kind of get you introduced into the concepts, the stories, the characters, the background, or the lore, whatever. And then they kind of amp up things. But for me, about midpoint through this movie, or maybe a little over midpoint, when things start amping up with the Bigfoot and whatever, we get this very specific scene that just did not sit right with me. And it's the scene where they're in the tent, the couple's in the tent, and there's like hand smacks all over the outside of it. Does that ring any bells to anyone? Like another found footage movie that came before this that did the exact same thing. And so I was kind of like, I remember when I watched it for the first time and seeing that and just being kind of like it was already like in the middle of the woods and you know, like in the woods and camping, and like there were so many things that reminded me already of maybe that it was influenced by the Blair Witch Project, but that one really irritated me. I also just didn't think that, I don't think that the characters are necessarily like unbelievable, but I don't think that they made me feel anything special. I wasn't really invested in their story. I didn't really care what happened to them. And I think it just lulled too much for me. You know, found footage is my number one favorite subgenre of horror, but my second is creature features, monster movies. And I know that, you know, we kind of go back and forth on this. Is it too much to show? Is it not enough? And I think with this one, it was not enough. And then we got this like oversaturation at the very end of all the things kind of coming together. And I just, I was just left feeling really underwhelmed. So if I had to give this a rating, well, I have to give it a rating, right? That's the point of the show. My rating out of 10 tapes. So I'm a big fan of Exist. I either gave it like, what'd I give that one? Like an 8, 8.5. I don't even know. Something high though, because I love that one. Is it weird that I never remember my ratings? Out of 10, like I wouldn't even rewatch Willow Creek. I thought it was so boring. I guess rating it out of 10 tapes, I would give it maybe like a 3. And honestly, the only reason it even gets a 3 from me is because I really like Bigfoot stuff. Bigfoot Society, by the way, the shirt that I'm wearing, if you're not familiar, is a podcast about cryptids. And the guy that runs it, Jeremiah, is a total doll. He's very, very kind, very funny, very engaging podcast host. If I can remember, hopefully I'll remember, I'll put the link to find his stuff in the description for this episode. Because if you are a cryptid enthusiast, a monster lover, you know, a Bigfoot enthusiast or whatever, he's definitely somebody to follow and keep up with. So my breakdown of this really is not going to be that long because I wasn't a super big fan. I think that when it comes to cryptids, I do expect to see more. It's fine to pick and choose the moments. We talk about that too all the time in Found Footage Fridays, where it's like, okay, you know, they're usually lower budget, so you have to pick your moments to show what you want to show. And that's fine. I have no problems with that. But this was... There's like nothing going on until like the end of the movie. And that really bugged me. I wanted so much more. And honestly, this was another one, and I've said this before about a few others, where I really genuinely struggled to pay attention. Like it just wasn't very engaging. And not to, this isn't a comparative episode, but when I think about the way Exist was and how that story built and how those characters were and the way that they pulled me in and I was like super engaged with it right from the very beginning, you know, Willow Creek sincerely falls short of that. I know it's like everyone's like, oh my God, it's the Bigfoot found footage. But to me, it's not. I think, you know, maybe it was like a pioneer in that. Maybe it was the first one. And maybe people love it. You know, like one of Tom's things, of course, is he really loves things that are in the woods. So that's obviously like a box that checks for him. And it's not that I don't like those, because I do too. I mean, you know, we've talked before about where we both fall with the Blair Witch Project being our kind of introduction to found footage films and and it's influential in that way to us, and our love for the subgenre. But I just, this was like too much like Blair Witch without the intrigue. And that made it really dull for me. And maybe that's the difference because, you know, Exist is a lot more action-y. There's a lot more, you know, aggression, and there's a lot more violence, and there's, you know, things like that, a decent amount more, that happens at a pretty steady pace. And I felt like Willow Creek was like nothing until the very end, minus a few things which we've seen before. So it just wasn't anything unique for me other than the element of a Bigfoot, which is why it's getting the only reason it even gets a 3 from me. It's probably streaming. I meant to look it up before I started recording this. Yeah, those are my thoughts on Willow Creek. I don't have a lot to add. Next week, we'll be back to normal. I know one of the films we're going to talk about is a screener we got. So either next week's episode or the week after will be a spoiler-free episode. So maybe a little bit shorter than usual, but that's because we're getting an early viewing from the filmmaker, Paul Brooks. So that one I know for sure we're going to do. I'm not sure what the other one is yet, but we'll do some planning, and Tom and I will be back at it starting next week. So, yeah, that's all I have for you guys. I'm going to let Tom wrap this episode up.
So, I know this is the 4th of July week, so happy 4th. It's a little late now based on when this is going to be aired, but happy 4th of July, everybody, and we will see you next week. Thanks. Bye.